So they lay him over the thing, they pull his hair up, and then they set an axe across the back of his neck. And he says, you can chop my head off, but you cannot take an inch of my neck. You can't take any of it, but you can take my head, but not any of my neck. And they move the axe back and forth, and they're not entirely sure where does the neck end and the head begin, and he ends up walking. It's called Loki's paradox, I think. Yeah. Just because I can't tell you exactly where one begins and one ends doesn't mean I can say, look, there is no such thing as heads or necks, because it's hard to tell when it starts. It doesn't work that way.
I would say to that is that if you, to hinge your entire ethical argument on consciousness and when consciousness begins, when we cannot even quantify what a valuable conscious experience is. If I'm dreaming, am I conscious? Am I not? If I'm DMT tripping, am I conscious? Am I not? If I'm 18 weeks gestation versus 24 weeks gestation, am I conscious or am I not? I would say that it makes much more sense logically to say we're not going to intervene and kill something before it can have a conscious experience, because that's our preference, because it would be either more convenient for us, it would be less hardships for us, because we foresee that the child might not have a good future.
I'm not making any of those arguments. I'm not making any of those arguments.
You're not making those arguments.
To be clear, also every argument you're making can be very easily addressed. When you take DMT or when you're dreaming, even if you were to temporarily completely cease your conscious experience, you already existed and you already asserted something. If Rachel says, I'm going to do this, but don't let me die, and then you disappear from
they do exist. No, you're just saying we're not talking about yet.
No,
you're
we're not
saying
talking
that if it's not conscious yet, it doesn't matter if it already
No one
exists.
here is denying that fetuses exist.
If you stop it from having the conscious experience, then it can't have it.
No one is saying whether or not fetuses exist. We all agree that they exist. The question is, has there been a conscious experience yet to assert itself or any preferences? For Rachel, for you, before you take DMT.
How does a 20-week gestation in fetus assert itself?
Because it's having a conscious experience.
How do you know that? You don't.
Destiny is such a moron. What, assert itself? A newborn baby can't assert itself. A newborn baby doesn't remember anything. So if I could unalive a newborn baby and it's done really quick, it doesn't feel any pain, I could just, again, just real quick, it just, I don't want to talk like this, but if I could just unalive it when it's quick and it's painless, doesn't feel any pain, doesn't even know that it was alive, you wouldn't justify me unaliving it, because you'd be like, well, no, that's a newborn baby, you shouldn't do that. So our thing is like, what's the difference here? See, we see all stages of life as life. But what you're saying is, see, here's the very early stages, and then you're saying right at this point it's bad to unalive a baby. And to us, that doesn't make any sense. And Destiny is basing it off of consciousness. But if that's what we're basing it off of, again, a newborn baby doesn't really have much consciousness. It doesn't really know what's going on. And so if Destiny is saying that, like, oh, once that newborn baby is asleep or something, or even if I could just do it really quick where it just unalives it really fast, doesn't even know that it was born and now it's gone, that it's okay. See, you're drawing an arbitrary line, which is what Rachel is trying to tell you. But Destiny is just not getting it. What do you guys think of this so far? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you're enjoying this so far. Let's continue.
Necessary. I don't know 100%.
Scientists told you?
No, you don't know 100%.
Probably?
Technically, if you want to get ultra philosophical about it, there's something called a philosophical zombie. I don't even know if you're having a conscious experience. That's not an insult, but we don't technically know if anybody is.
How do you know you're not just a brain in a vat? How do I know I'm right?
But
How do any of us
we
know?
can
This is a very silly place
it's
to
not,
base an ethical argument off of, in my opinion.
It's not silly. Only in debate terms is it silly in the middle of a debate. But if you step into the real world, these are the decisions that we make in hospitals every single day, across all of time and across all of space.
If you think that debate is silly and there's this delineation between the real world and philosophy, and that we can't use logical argumentation to determine these things because in the real world we just all agree, or in the real world these are all fallacies. It's a logical fallacy to say, well, in the real world it works differently.
No, I'm not. What I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to hand wave debate. What I'm trying to do is to take, because if I'm in the middle of making an argument, what sometimes I'll take a step back and I'll say, have I committed myself to a position that actually seems highly incongruent with a macro picture? So when we're in the midst of an argument and we start saying things like, well, really, we don't have any idea if any conscious experience exists. We don't know anything about it. Well, let's take a step back on a macro scale. Do we really believe that? Clearly, we don't believe that. If we look at how we behave in the real world, if we look at how we behave in hospitals, where we're deciding when to kill people or when not to kill people, clearly we have some concept of conscious experiences. When we look at how we treat people with medicine, when we look at how we analyze structures of the brain, when we look at where like death comes from, right? It's not when you cut off your arm. It's not when you lose a kidney. It's when your brain stops to function. It seems like we have some conception of where conscious experience comes from. So we go back then to the debate and we look at the microscopic arguments we're making to say things like, well, we don't know anything about conscious experience. It seems a little bit, it seems like not the best faith of an argument. It seems like a debate argument because that's not true. All of us have some concept of like how consciousness works and how we decide when people are dead.
Yeah, I don't want to soak up the whole entire debate with you and I going back and forth on epistemology and philosophy and logical argumentation. So we'll just kind of leave that there for right now. I think we've kind of exhausted that, and we'll let the other two panelists say some things.
Rachel and Kendon, are you both life absolutists?
You'd have to define the phrase.
Can you define that? Yeah.
Meaning that everybody should live no matter what. Under no circumstances, no one should die under any circumstances. Actually, I'll even say under no circumstances should anyone be killed.
I would not be a life absolutist.
There are too many variables there.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the case of self-defense, I know there are people like Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, who refuse to defend themselves even if someone comes at them with a knife. I'm not one of those people. Because in that situation, for example, in the case of self-defense, if there's a chance that one of you is going to go down, it's almost an animal reflex to defend yourself. So if you believe that if what you mean by life absolutist is someone who cannot think of a situation in which killing of another human being would ever be permissible, then no, I'm not one of those people.
Okay.
There must be exceptions to. I hate absolute rules. There must be an exception to an absolute rule. If you see what I mean. If that's not an absurd thing to say. But there are certain decisions.
Rachel, can you kill the spirit?
No.
So what's the problem with abortion as a Christian?
Destiny is what happens when you strip morality out of a man and replace it with debate club tricks. He cannot even tell you why killing a newborn would be wrong. He talks about awareness and experience, like that makes it complicated. But the second you push him, the whole thing collapses. If consciousness is the only thing that matters, then sleeping babies, coma patients, the mentally handicapped, and the elderly lose their right to live the moment they are inconvenient. This is not philosophy. This is death cult thinking. The kind of thinking that excuses everything as long as you can frame it as personal preference. You want a real standard. It is simple. If it is human life, it is protected. You do not get to butcher it because it cannot speak yet. You do not get to erase it because it cannot file a lawsuit. Destiny can spin all the dream states and zombie hypotheticals he wants. It does not change what every sane person knows. Killing innocent life is wrong, always. No philosophical zombie theory will save him from that truth. He can debate himself into a circle until the day he dies. And no, I am not going to waste time digging into Destiny's personal life, but there is no surprise that a man defending the morality of killing the voiceless has the personal wreckage he does. You do not accidentally end up like that. You live it. Destiny is not an outlier. He is the mainstream now.